Yeah, we're at 10:02, so I think we will get rocking and rolling. So again, thank you everybody for participating in today's webinar. Um, I had sent some emails out to some folks who were kind of highlighted or selected or encouraged to consider joining the Innovative Leaders Network for the 25-26 school year. Wendy and I, as well as Colin Rittmaster, had an opportunity to do a breakout session at EdCon. And so I know there were some folks who could not attend that session or had another breakout they wanted to go out to, just didn't work out. So this really is essentially a repeat of that session. So if you are someone who attended the EdCon breakout, you're going to probably see a lot of the same information, but you're welcome to stay on and pick our brains and ask some questions as you are thinking about your potential participation in this program this school year. But I did just want to preface that. So if some of this looks familiar and you were at that session, that would be why. But otherwise, my name is Ryan Casey. I'm the Associate Director of Digital Learning and Innovation for MASSP, and I am joined by our Executive Director, Wendy Zadeb. And our contact information is on there. So I do plan on sending out this slide deck afterwards to you all, a copy of the recording, so you can see Wendy's contact information, mine. If you have any questions about this, if you're here on behalf of someone in your admin team, maybe that's thinking about joining the ILN, we'd love to answer any questions that you might have. But really today we want to cover kind of what is the ILN. I'll get through the agenda here in just a moment, but I wanted Wendy to kind of start us off with a little bit, if you don't mind, Wendy, just kind of explaining the concept behind why we wanted to put together a network of these innovative leaders that are in Michigan through our membership at MASSP. Could you just talk about kind of what you thought about to bring this last school year when we did this for the very first time?
So a couple of years ago, I went to the ASU GSV conference that's run by Arizona State University, and it's in San Diego. And it's really kind of like an interesting conference that brings, uh, educators, higher ed, um, tech people, like venture capitalists. So, just a lot of different things that are happening in the space of education, but also kind of like in the peripheral. It also makes you think about like employability and like what's happening in terms of just tech globally. So, it really opened my eyes to see what's happening in other states, what's going on in terms of just the advancements of technology. And I felt like already, I think a lot of us, are pretty aware. Test scores in Michigan haven't been great. Not that test scores are the measure of everything, but, it's just kind of like things just need to get better and we need to make some changes. And then when I saw the advancements in technology on top of that, and I felt like we were really behind because I just wasn't seeing any of those things in Michigan, it just kind of made me say, okay, like what can I do as the leader of MASSP to help get people thinking more about innovation and what we could do to improve teaching and learning? Because the other thing I think we just have to be very cognizant of, I don't know how closely you're tracking your attendance numbers in your district and making sure that you're not losing any part of your student population to like an online school, because it just really seems like families are looking for a lot more flexibility than what we can give, as most traditional schools. And if you really sit down and talk to kids and you said, hey, what would the perfect week look like for you? They don't, in terms of school, most kids do not want to come to school 5 days a week, and sit in a desk and do the same things that we've been doing. And I feel like we missed an opportunity post-COVID to kind of make some changes, to make some modifications that would make teachers happier, that would make students happier, that would allow more time for kids to do experiential learning. And I think part of the reason why we don't do those things is because you just don't have time to think about it. One of the books that we're going to start with is this book called Reopen to Reinvent. And, I mean, the author very astutely says, it's very hard to have your full-time job and to try to innovate at the same time. Like You know, you guys are already working a million hours a week, and it takes time to think about innovation, and it takes time to think about, the processes that have to be in place. So part of what we want to be able to do this year in year one is to provide what I've kind of referred to as a sampler box to see like a lot of different things that are happening and for you to really kind of understand your school community and what might work, like in terms of an innovation. And this might be like a situation where we visit, a middle school that we visit, Northville is called Hillside Middle School. And you might go in there and see what those teachers are doing and just think about one aspect of it that might work for you. So I think that's the important thing to also realize is that innovation isn't one size fits all because it doesn't work that way. Like you have to understand your school community and think about what the needs are and think about what the interests are. And we had a great conversation this year with Forest Hills Public Schools, and it's a three high school district. And when the superintendent started talking to them about the need to innovate, they all did, but they did it in very different ways at the three different high schools. So, it's just interesting to think about what's going on out there, what might work for your school community, and how do you just basically say to your teachers, I trust you and I give permission, for you to try things. Those are the types of things that we want to be able to provide you with. And when you're in a network and every month you're doing something, it's intentional learning. Like all of us might say to ourselves, oh, I'm going to take some time this year and I'm going to like take an online AI course, or I'm going to, do this, or I'm going to do that. And it just doesn't happen because of the busyness of the school year. And so I feel like when you are, in this network and you're committed to talking about it every month, someone's going to bring you the information. You're going to have time to think about it. You're going to have time to maybe even try something or implement something in between. You're going to have some school visit opportunities. So the opportunities being brought to you and will help you to like be able to pace it out and be intentional about focusing on innovative opportunities this year. So that's kind of what the original intent was. And I know that Ryan plans on running the network in the same way this year, pretty much. And I'll certainly be around. I want to participate and I want to be part of it. It's just a big time commitment, obviously, for me, to have to plan everything and do everything that I did last year. So I'm looking forward to supporting it and to being part of it again and to meeting all of you that want to join the network.
And I'm excited to be able to jump in as well. I was able to participate on a handful of sessions last year, so I'm excited to be, fully part of the group this time around as well. So, what I'd like you to do, some of you already introduced yourself in the chat, so that's great. If not, go ahead and introduce yourself. And I'd like you to respond to the following. As Wendy mentioned, this need for change, and you're thinking about what is something that you want to maybe do at your local school based on the needs of your teachers or your students or your parent community. What is that one thing you would love to reimagine for next year? If you could wave your magic little wand and boom, we're doing this next year, it's ready to go. Go ahead and enter that in the chat. We'll give you a couple moments to do that. You want to make sure, I think everyone did a good job with their introductions. Make sure you have it set to everyone, not just the hosts and panelists. So Wendy gave you her magic wand. You get to do anything you want that's innovative or anything you want to reimagine at your school starting in 2 weeks. What would that be? So we have a mention of bell schedules listed, reimagining our response to discipline issues, cross-curricular project-based classes. And so as these are coming in, what I'd like you to do, I don't think we can do the reply feature necessarily in the webinar format, But go through these and see if there's one or two responses that maybe intrigues you or challenges or aligns to something you wanted to do, and just respond. So you might say, Kyle, hey, I'm thinking about doing bell schedules as well. I We were thinking about a late start, to support student need. Something like that would work.
I think it, so many of the things that we struggle with in schools in terms of like student engagement and attendance and things like that. I really think about like a lot of the schools that we visited when we were out at ASU GSV and how the students were so self-directed and they were, having internships every semester and, really like so much voice and choice in what they were doing. All of those things were eliminated because the kids were doing what they wanted to do. So I think about a lot of the issues that we have, with MTSS, with, attendance, with kids just coming to school and going through the motions, but not really being engaged. And I look at the schools that we visited and how, like, when you really talk to the kids on the side, they talked about how traditional school just didn't fit them. But now that they found this opportunity, they're excited every day. And I just really feel like that is such a missing link in what we're doing because in Michigan, we have just been so tied to, very archaic uh, structures in terms of our pupil accounting manual. One of the interesting things I learned going to that ASU GSV conference, for example, was, how during COVID, the pupil accounting manual completely like went out the window, kind of like it was a lot more flexible. That happened obviously everywhere worldwide, especially in the United States. And our colleagues in Utah basically went from a very, in-depth pupil accounting manual to the rules that they had during COVID had never changed back. So that's the type of things that I thought was like, wow, like why did we go back to exactly the way things were, and all of those limitations and what could we do to expand student voice and choice and opportunity? And that's just been like so ingrained in my head, like of things that I think we need to be doing. So I appreciate all your comments because I
These are
think
great.
I think those are the spot on types of things that we want to explore. And that's, I think Ryan has a plan for the year, but also based on what you're saying that you want to learn about. When we think about what those field visits will be, I think Ryan will try to be responsive to what you're looking for.
Absolutely. Really great responses in here, and a lot of different stuff too, which shows you're really paying attention to what your own school community really needs. And I love seeing the interactions between people to see what other people are already doing or other people are maybe further along in that process. So that's great. So thank you for responding in the chat and connecting with one another.
I see Joe commented about wanting to develop relationships through homerooms, and that was something that we
Yep.
heard from people in the group last year. So Forest Hills Eastern was one of our visits last year, and their model, Joe, might be of interest to you. So that's another thing, Ryan, you might be able to do too, is once you see what everybody's interests are, if some of the recordings that we did last year, might
Sure.
make sense for this year's people, you could even just share videos if you're not going to do any of the, crossover site visits.
Absolutely. All righty. Well, thank you for sharing, everybody. So, we're going to talk a little more quickly about why we have this need for change. And Wendy did a great job kind of setting the stage for that. We are going to jump into kind of the nuts and bolts of what the ILN looks like at both the year one level, which is what I think this group is thinking about joining, as well as the year two group. So, once you complete year one, if you want to continue to move on with that journey, if time allows and he's able to join, we have Jeff Dykehouse, who's a principal at East Grand Rapids Middle School, who completed year one already and is getting ready to join year two. He's going to jump in and just kind of give his firsthand experience of what it was like and what it meant to him as a building leader. And then really kind of wrap things up and talk about next steps and how you can plan for this school year to potentially join the second cohort of the year one group. So, kind of why change? I'm going to have three quotes pop up by three different authors. The first one is by Michael Horn, which Wendy mentioned his name in his book, From Reopen to Reinvent. which is going to be part of the fall book study for our year one group. And he has the quote that says, "The future of learning isn't about reopening schools as they were, it's about reinventing them around what works best for students." Another great quote is by Ethan Malik. We've done a book study from him. He's really a leader in this AI space. If you follow him on Twitter or X, we read his book, Co-Intelligence. And so he has a quote here from that book that says, "We're not being replaced by AI. We're being invited to work with it. The challenge is figuring out how." And then another author that I know a lot of us on the MASSP team has read his work. He participated in one of our Catalyst conferences last school year. Will Richardson, I think it's Nine Big Questions is his one really popular book. But what if we didn't start with content, curriculum, or compliance, but with a commitment to real deep learning? And so what I want you to do is take a moment and just read these three quotes again and kind of determine which one speaks loudest to you. And then in the chat, and I'll move back to the slide if you want to read them again. I'm going to have you interact based on those quotes. I did add this line to this slide, and Wendy mentioned this at the beginning. A big, piece of what we're trying to do here with the Innovative Leaders Network isn't just about tweaking some sort of system that's in your school, whether it's related to reinvention or AI or curriculum, but giving you the tools in the network to allow you to really build on your leadership skills as this innovative leader within your community. So, and Wendy mentioned that, not working from a silo, but from a group perspective. And that's a really important piece of this. And so I'd like you to pick one of these quotes, again, the one that resonated with you the most, and in the chat, drop in, why did you choose that quote? What did it mean to you? Does that align with something that we just mentioned previously in the last protocol that we did? Does that align with something that you would like to reimagine in your school? And you can say, I like horns because this, or Malik or Richardson.
I try not to get too over dramatic about it, but I sincerely do worry about like the future of what school will look like if we don't change. Because I honestly feel like people are going to have and already do have really high quality online options. And I'm sure you all realize it more acutely even than I feel it because I'm at MASSP and you're dealing with kids every day. But kids drive the ship for a lot of families, you know? And if they're coming home every day saying, Mom, I just don't want to go to school anymore, here's another option that I found. I just feel it. And I mean, we're seeing colleges are, not having a problem at all accepting kids that are coming from online, programs. So that's not even a factor anymore. And, we're also seeing kids just want to be entrepreneurial and they want to start their life earlier. And like kids are starting their own businesses and things like that. And, working, like going to school 5 days a week, just doesn't fit their lifestyle either. So I don't know. I just feel like the world's going to be changing pretty quickly. And if we don't start adapting, it's just, things are just going to change around us. And that's my big concern too, more long term.
Looks like we have a pretty mixed response. So people are kind of identifying with the different quotes. And I appreciate like Lauren's thinking about her role within a career tech ed setting, right? It might look completely different than somebody that's at a middle school or a high school or traditional
Yeah.
school. So
hmm
that's great. Looks like, again, pretty mixed response on the quotes there. So thank you for responding in the chat for that.
You
So
know,
go
getting
ahead.
getting into that AI thing, that's another piece of this network is we really have tapped into working with Aaron Boffman from Michigan Virtual. And like the slides got that partnership piece. And man, Aaron just really has his finger on the pulse of what's going on in terms of AI and connections like worldwide. And man, he showed us last year some things that were just like cutting edge. None of us had seen anywhere else, and was able to get some people to jump on with us and show us, like what's going on in terms of different, platforms and programs. And so that will be part of what this network does as well. So, we always like to remind people that innovation is doing something that we've always done in a better and improved way, which doesn't necessarily mean it has to be through technology.
Hmm?
So the focus of the ILN is not just AI or technology based, but that is part of, the picture of what's happening. So we do want to be able to show you some things that are kind of like cutting edge and happening out there, not in a way that's a sales pitch. No one's trying to sell you a program or a platform, but to make you aware of like what capabilities are. And I think that's another cool aspect of this group.
Absolutely. Um, so now we want to actually dive into kind of the structures and the nuts and bolts of the ILN. And so, just to make it clear, we really did design this as a 2 year experience. So as I mentioned, we had some people that were in your shoes last year and they completed year one. And so they're getting ready to go into year two. It could potentially be a 3 year or a 4 year experience too, depending on the project. There's no like, you must do this thing within this amount of time, right? It just like you want students to have a personalized experience, right? Building leaders need to have a personalized experience with how they're going to navigate change as well. And so we really want to give you the tools to be able to lead that innovation, right, with courage and clarity and purpose. And so we do this by blending professional learning, introducing you to some different design thinking concepts, and give you some tools to really begin doing some real time experimentation along the way to begin having those conversations and start getting feedback and stakeholder input. And so we've kind of divided the structure two different ways. So year one, we really have this idea set to have you discover and learn. So as Wendy mentioned, kind of this uh, uh, sampler box approach of just kind of what is out there, what are some different things that you might be interested in, and based on the feedback, year one participants will give me early on in the school year, we will probably mix that up. Every year will look a little different just based on what the trends are and what the needs of the group are, right? And so we'll kind of introduce you to different concepts, topics, experts, different content in that discover and learn lens. And then for those that want to move on to year two, they really get to the lead and transform. So they're going to move past just the action research and begin that implementation process. And so that's how year one and year two differentiate. And along the way, there's going to be coaching. There are, as Wendy mentioned, site visits where you can see this in action. So we'll probably have an opportunity to talk to experts, watch videos, read some books, learn about different concepts. But then it's really important to be able to have the opportunity to see it in action, right? Where you have the opportunity to talk to students, talk to other building leaders who are doing the work, talk to teachers, or get parent feedback. Design studios where we allow you the opportunity to begin working on some of these projects with your peers, right? That community approach that we mentioned at the beginning, and some other PLN events that we'll schedule out along the way. So year one specifically, we want to build a shared understanding of what innovation looks like in our Michigan schools, in your school, explore some of these bold ideas through design-based leadership, and as I mentioned, kind of strengthen your capacity to be able to actually lead this work. And so some of the really core components of the year one include a kickoff event where we're going to kind of set the tone and kind of have a vision setting plan where we're going to talk about what is it that we are interested in learning about, what is the need of your school, what are some ideas, just kind of what we talked about at the beginning of this webinar that you are really interested in and you want to really focus on for your school as you begin to think about a project that you want to tackle. From that kickoff event, we will jump into a book study. And so that is that Reopen to Reinvent by Michael Horn. It's interesting because the book, believe it or not, is like 5 years old. It was written coming out of the pandemic and remote learning. And it really talks about, but it's still so relevant now because it talks about, we did these really amazing, wonderful things to be innovative, to make learning its absolute best based on the circumstances we were in. And now that we're back to normal, right? uh, a lot of those things we just kind of moved back to our traditional the way things were before the pandemic, right? And so he really challenges us as to why is that and what are you going to do about it. And so this will all take place in the fall, and again that'll really kind of ground the work we're going to do because then eventually once we kind of get to semester two, if you will, or the second half of the school year, we're going to have webinars on different focus topics where we're going to be able to learn from experts and dive into topics related to things, to time structures or different tools that are out there and instructional design. And then see that in action, as I mentioned, on some school visits. And a lot of the school visits, by the way, are open to not just you. If you are the one person that's participating from your team in the ILN, you want to bring teacher leaders with you. Absolutely can, or your admin team, or somebody from central office, a counselor. That is no problem because some of these things you want these stakeholders, right, to be part of this, to be able to see this in action. It's one thing for you to see it and bring it back and talk to them about it. It's another. It's a really powerful opportunity to have some of those teachers or other leaders come in and observe it themselves. And then we'll even supply you with some intersession kind of optional activities that you can do as part of that research to begin surveying, scanning the stakeholders in your school community for, those needs. And we've heard from principals from last year. They really thought, we need X in my building. But then when they dive in and start talking to students or parents or teachers, it's like, oh, maybe we need more of Y. Maybe, we want to make sure there's an alignment there, right? And on the work that you're going to do, because it's going to take a lot of time and resources to do so. So that was year one. Just briefly, year two, you're going to actually do the work, right? You're going to work on what we have called an innovation change project that aligns to the need of your building. So all of the stuff that you were able to explore, sample, in year one, you actually begin to now start designing, testing, and scaling in year two. And I do want to point out, because someone has asked this before, when we say year two, it doesn't mean that whatever that thing you want to tackle, personalized learning or micro schools, it doesn't mean you have to it must be up and running by year two, right? It's like it's a process, right? For some schools, they might be able to get that done in a year's time. For others, it might take 2-3 years. And so we say year two, but just know that's the goal that we're working towards. And then hopefully grow your confidence and skills as an innovative leader as well. And so we have that personalized change project that you will work on for your school. There's a lot of coaching and mentoring that's going to go on in the year two group. Putting together design studios and learning networks where if we have a couple of building leaders that want to learn about the portrait of a graduate and they want to do that work, well, let's have them get together and we'll set up some sessions where they can take together and then also connect them with people who have already done that work, right? To be able to help them and learn from them along the way and learn from their process from someone who's already done that work and still bring in experts to talk to you about change management or how do you deal with pushback from your community, things like that. There'll still be some site visits available for the year two folks. And then a big piece of this is, as we mentioned, being able to scale it and also being able to kind of celebrate and be your chief narrator and explain and be able to work on explaining to the community what you've been able to do and what you're doing and why you're doing that.
So since you guys are focused on year one, if we kind of jump back to thinking about that, I think there's a couple of key things. And I see Jeff Dykehouse has joined us today. He was in for year one last year. So he'll have an opportunity in a minute to just, share his experience. That's why we asked him to join us today. But for your year one people, I think something that's a really critical piece is letting your staff know, hey, I'm engaged in this network for this year. I will be, learning about different innovation things happening. I want to be sharing that with you, whether that's in, your weekly staff, update that you might do or at a staff meeting. But I think it's really important that you let your staff know that you're out there and looking for things because one of the things I don't think we can do as principals is abdicate our responsibility to lead on this. I don't think you want to let your tech director be the one that selects the AI platform that you're going to be using. You want to be doing that with your staff. And it's really hard for you to lead something you haven't experienced, you haven't taught in the world of AI. And so, how do you engage in a way and partner right beside your teachers so that you're learning along with them and you're able to walk the talk, so to speak? So, I think that's a really important thing. I think your staff looks to you as the person who's going to be out there seeing what's happening and bringing it back to them. And if you don't do it, who's going to? I think that's a really like critical thing is like your staff to view you as that person who's really like looking out for what's happening in education. You're knowledgeable and you're bringing it back to them.
Absolutely. Thanks, Wendy. And I'll show at the end of our webinar, like we really did try to plan this out. We have really a lot of the dates already picked for the entire school year. We know it's incredibly hard to get out of the building, especially to do some of those site visits. And that's why we said if you can bring people with you, so it's not just you out of the building, it's a team of people is out of the building. I think it makes it a little easier um, to, or at least hopefully it helps you justify being out of the building. And we want to give it to you all well in advance so you can have that on your calendar so you can let people know when you're going to be gone or out of the building or only going to be able to respond to emails or text, that sort of thing. So based on what we described in whether it was year one or something you heard from year two, which of the year one or year two program components sound the most interesting to you? Why does that matter within your leadership role or school context? And what might be more information you need? So really just curious, based on what you heard so far, kind of what's circling in your mind. And I'd love for you to answer one of these in the chat. And we'll give you a couple of moments to do that. And then we're going to turn it over to Jeff Dykehouse from East Grand Rapids Middle School to hear from his experience. So we'll give you a couple moments to respond in the chat. Here's what, so what, now what? Thank you, Julie and Derek, for responding. So we have some responses to just seeing what others are doing across the state, being able to see it actually in practice, networking with other leaders. I know for me, as a principal, I was always at smaller rural schools where I didn't have a large admin team. A lot of the times it was me, myself, and I. And so that's what I always appreciated about MASSP when I had an opportunity to go to professional learning opportunities is to connect with my PLN that I was able to create and of people that were in similar situations and being able to have a group of people that you can lean on and pick their brain and explore concepts and how's this working for you. And again, that's just a really important part of the ILN. Kyle mentioned getting out of your own bubble, right? And seeing what innovation looks like in other places. Absolutely.
I think there's great synergy in the group too. Like, even when you're on a site visit or, we give you opportunities to go into breakout rooms and talk to each other during these meetings. I think it just really helps you to like say, all right, I'm not the only person thinking this way, or, and just have other people that you connect with. And even outside of your athletic league or like the people that you commonly talk to, I think it's just really helpful from that perspective as well.
All right. And so now I would like to, oh, it looks like I stopped sharing. I got to reshare here. Here we go. All right. I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Dykehouse. Jeff is the principal at East Grand Rapids Middle School. I know he's busy back. You can see in the office doing things. He was gracious enough to leave one meeting and hop on with us in between the next meeting that's starting. And so Jeff also has been on our board of directors as the middle school representative on the west side of the state. And so has gone through it. I know Wendy and I can describe to you all the pieces and the nuts and bolts and what you're going to experience, but we also know there's a lot of power in hearing from people who have already participated and have done this work. And so, Jeff, if you don't mind, just kind of just an overview of the experience last year, what it meant to you as a leader, trying to, working on some sort of change within your school building at East Grand Rapids Middle School. Feel free to touch on also kind of what you're looking at potentially working on as your change project for year two, if you don't mind just sharing all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for letting me join and share a little bit. It has been really exciting to be able to be a part of this program last year. And in reading all these comments that are just coming in here in the last 10 minutes, I think what everyone is looking for is exactly what I've gotten out of this program the last year. And the biggest takeaway, the biggest positive that I've been able to take away has been in that networking and being able to connect with leaders from around the state through those site visits, through those webinars and breakouts, and just the opportunity to connect with other principals and find out what's going on in their school, in their neck of the woods, what they're working on, and being able to ask questions and partner with them and then go and visit their sites has been super exciting. For me, and I'm guessing many of you are in the same place if you've been doing this for more than 5 years, is I finally, the last year to 2 years, I finally feel like I'm not in that survival mode of COVID and pandemic and just surviving, and that we've flipped a page and now we're talking about how do we thrive and how do we take our schools to the next level versus just we're all just trying to manage the day-to-day operations of a pandemic world and a school. And I hope that you're in the same boat as my district where we've turned the page on that. And now we're talking about how do we build, how do we grow, how do we do the next best thing? How do we do school and not just go back to pre-pandemic and do business like we always did business? How do we look ahead and do things differently? And being part of the ILN the last year has really opened up so many conversations for me to really get into that. The book studies I've really enjoyed because, I'll read a chapter or two on my own, but then it's getting to meet with 20 other people and talk about it and talk about their takeaways from it and talk about, well, what is your school doing with AI and what are you looking at and where are you going next? And so I enjoy reading, but having an accountability partner that you're going to then get to connect with and talk to about it makes it more meaningful and more impactful for us. And so those things have been really exciting for us. But hands down, the best part of the ILN for me was the site visits. And I had several opportunities this last year to go and visit other schools. I visited one school that's basically in my backyard. I went out to Jenison and went to JIA, their international academy, which even though I'm in a middle school and that is got a whole different K-12 focus to it, there are so many takeaways that I was able to get by going and seeing, man, they are doing school a different way and they are meeting needs of kids that may not fit your cookie cutter, K-12 in-person public school. And I know I've got kids in East Grand Rapids that don't fit that mold either. And we need to start thinking about how do we meet the needs of those kids and those families. And then I took a trip across the state and I went over and visited Bill Jones over there. And oh my gosh, the things that they are doing is just phenomenal. And to get to walk through their school, get to talk to their teachers. And that was the great thing with these site visits, is it's not just a principal, right? There's teachers from these schools that we've connected with. There's other administrators that have participated. Superintendent from Jenison came and presented as part of their program. And so having time to spend walking through the school, walking into classrooms at each of the site visits, we walked through and we visited classrooms and got to see kids doing things in action to find out how these schools are operating and what new things they're doing. And I can tell you, I didn't come back and say, man, I need to do the same thing that Bill is doing over there, but it just planted some seeds, right? And now I know I've got Bill's contact and I've reached out to him to say, all right, we're not going to do school the same way you're doing it over there. My clientele is different. My needs are different. But I've got a few takeaways that I've gotten from them. And it comes back to my school and we start talking about, right, what could we do differently? And the other piece, and Wendy mentioned the importance of this, is bringing your staff alongside you, right? Not doing this like in the dark and in a closet, but being very upfront, right? My superintendent knows these visits that I go and do and these things. And I come back, and every time I come back, she's asking me, right? What'd you learn? What's the takeaways? Can you present at our next admin team meeting the things that you've learned? And then I've brought some teachers. So I went to the Michigan Virtual AI Conference, and I brought several teachers to that conference because it's important that we're bringing our staff with us, right? We're leading, but we're not leading by ourselves. We're leading alongside our staff so that they're part of that, and they're going to be part of that, and they're going to have the buy-in and the excitement about it. And so I've been looking at ways to bring my teachers with me to participate and be part of it. And so it's been really exciting. And year one was just kind of like, for me, it was kind of like fueling that energy in year one, right? I read the books, I started doing the site visits, and it just kind of fueled that energy and that excitement to be a change agent for education in our school. And now as I start stepping into year two, it's really starting to focus that on my building, my district, what are the needs for my students? And so taking some of those things I've learned and talking to our staff and right, where do we go next to now take that energy and put it into action? And so our staff has been talked about, right? And I think about our right change project, our innovative project, really looking at AI at the middle school level and what do we do? And other great person we connected with the last year, and I'm guessing, I don't want to put it out there if it's not, but I'm guessing Aaron Bauman might be a part of year one going forward. I hope so, because he's fantastic and just such a wealth of knowledge in the world of innovation and schools. And again, having people like him that you can connect with and talk to and talk about, man, in a middle school where we're dealing with 11-year-olds who maybe aren't 13 and meet that legal age requirement of an AI program. What does that look like? How do we bring AI to a level for an 11 and 12-year-old, which looks very different than a high school might be able to leverage AI, but still important that we're bringing it to our kids, teaching our kids how to use AI effectively and appropriately, because they need to know it. They're going to need to know it for the workforce, for post-secondary education. And so our staff has really been looking at that and looking at going back to the AI conference again this year, just to start really trying to build in how do we wrap our arms around artificial intelligence at a middle school and preparing our kids right for those things that come after middle school.
Yeah, and I would say, Jeff, last year we had a good mix of people in the network that were middle school and high school. So you definitely had, other colleagues within the network that you could, work with and talk to as well. So there are, obviously there's some similarities, but there's a lot of differences as well. So I think that was probably helpful to you.
And it even, all of this just fueled that excitement. So even outside of the ILN, I made connections and I went and did site visits to 2 other schools that weren't necessarily set up through the ILN, but it just fueled this excitement about getting out and learning from others. So I went and did 2 other site visits just on my own with other principals I've been connecting with through MASSP. And one of those principals came and did a site visit at my school, just in that excitement of networking and getting out and seeing what others are doing. It really fuels that. And I get it. I know how hard it is to leave our buildings, right? It is hard to be able to say, I'm going to leave my building for half a day or, right, for sometimes a full day. That is really difficult. But if we don't make that happen, we just get stuck in our rut of doing the same thing we've always done. And we have to be able to, right, empower either our assistant principal to lead the building while we're gone or a teacher leader. I've got a teacher leader that I've empowered to kind of be an acting administrator in my building while I step away from the building for a day. If my AP and I go together, we have a teacher leader that is able to step in and right support the building. Because if we don't find those opportunities to step out, if we don't network with our peers, we aren't going to grow. And so that's where, right, I know Ryan said he's got the dates and he'll share them with you. Put them in your calendar now. Block those times off, right? Consider that some sacred time for your own learning, your own growth, because your school will be better for it. Talk to your superintendent about what your takeaways are going to be. And right, it should be easy to sell them on something this exciting, because it's going to bring back such good things for your district that you talk to them early, you get them to see the importance of attending things like this. And I'm fairly confident that they'll support you And then when you come back, you tell them all about it so that you're continuing to encourage them to support the work that you're doing to lead your building.
So true, Jeff. I mean, that's awesome. Like another piece, and I mentioned about bringing your staff along, but also whoever your direct supervisor is, making sure that they're hearing from you about what you're learning, and what you'd like to discuss at the district. And I know that your experience of, being asked to present and share, at admin team meetings was a very common feedback that we got from everybody that was in the network, that they were kind of being seen as an expert or somebody who was like cutting edge in the district. And I think that ups your stock, with your boss and with your colleagues as well. Being able to talk about what's happening and what you're seeing definitely puts you kind of in the forefront, which is a cool side benefit.
I think some superintendents attended some of the site visits too and some of the meetings, right? So I think that's always an opportunity to invite them to be part of that change program too.
And when you can't attend a site visit, we did try last year. We didn't do it with every single one, but I would try to capture kind of the things that happened on that site visit, or ask the principal or a couple of the teachers that we met with to do a recording with me to kind of spec up people that weren't there. And I do know that, sometimes people would contact, that school on the side and say, hey, I couldn't come to the site visit on that day. Could I set up a different time? So those types of things happened as well.
Well, thank you, Jeff, so much. We appreciate your time. We know you got to go and get ready for your next meeting. So I do want to point out one thing Jeff did mention is, with the site visit, we don't plan on, there shouldn't be an expectation when you go to a site visit. I'm just going to take all of their stuff, this cookie cutter thing, bring it back to my school. Because as Jeff mentioned, maybe you're going to visit a middle school and you're a high school, or you're at an ISD or a tech center, right? But there are, pieces or major components of that you can bring back and you use, but you're obviously going to have to customize that to the, specific needs that you have. And so there's still a lot of benefit in going to these different schools, even though the setting might be completely different, or the makeup of the student population might, that doesn't matter, right? Don't get focused on that. Like, oh, that's a small school or that's a big school. We can't do that. So, don't let that get in the way. And so I appreciate Jeff mentioning that. And we're excited to see how East Grand Rapids navigates the AI world in their middle school next school year. So thanks again, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I threw my email into the chat. Feel free to reach out at any time if I can be helpful. So thanks everyone.
Jeff.
Thank you.
I think one of the critical takeaways last year too was also like, people changing, like whether it's their bell schedule or like, I know that, when we think about master schedule at a high school, you're like, how can I make this work when I have a building of, in my case at Rochester, 1800? Well, I was kind of blown away by the fact that Forest Hills, I mean, at Forest Hills Northern, they have like 4 major different programs going on within that building. Like, I mean, it's like, how do they do the scheduling for that? Well, you can talk to the assistant principal who does the scheduling for that, and just help you to think through those things. Because for me anyway, I think one of the like things that keeps you from doing something is just like trying to like worrying about people accounting or how you're going to make that work, within the structure that you already have. But people are doing it. And so I think that's the thing that will be helpful to you as well, is just being able to see the possibilities and not get stuck in the constraints that, that are there, with people accounting.
So just to begin wrapping up here, as we talking about next steps for the 25-26 school year, and I will drop this link in the chat here in a moment, but the schedule is available on the ILN webpage at massp.com/innovative_leaders, and I'll take us to the site so you can see it in just a moment. But we kind of have all the different key components labeled out, kind of give you a general timeline of when they occur, as it relates to the kickoff launch event, the book study, webinars, site visits, even some of those intercession opportunities, and then all of the dates and kind of what the focus is for each session and event. And the registration is actually open. So I'm going to, all right, can you guys see this screen? Did it switch? Wendy? Good. All right. So if you go to this page, which I will copy and paste into the chat now. This is kind of the main landing page that talks about the differences between, year one, again, discover and learn versus year two. And there's links on this main landing page where you can go to register for year one, and it breaks down the costs and all that other important information. But if you click on year one, discover and learn, talks about kind of the outcomes we have provided, which we discussed. And if you click on each one of these little toggles, so it kind of explains what's going to take place. So our kickoff date is going to be September 24th. I think we're leaning towards virtual. We haven't decided on that. We're going to get that finalized here the next week or so. It talks about the book study. That'll take place October through December in the mornings. One of the feedback that we heard from past participants was, if we try and do a book study or things in the afternoon, too many problems pop up and make their way to your desk, right? And so trying to get these in the morning before some of those issues arise. And so that's what we're going to try and do with the webinars. Site visits obviously are on there. And then you can see the schedule, right? So we have all of these days, and we might tweak a couple days based on the schedule needed from the people who are hosting. If they can't do the 18th, they have to do the 17th. Obviously, we'll communicate that well in advance, but it does help get that on your schedule, on your calendars as you're planning your week. And so we want to just give you all of that information. I know it's kind of a lot to look at in one glance, but we just thought it was really important to give you all of those dates. And so that is the main page. You get all that information. And again, back on the main ILN webpage, you can click to go and actually register for year one.
I think the we have the site visits listed on there, but once we get the group established and we survey people about like what your interests are in learning, the topic of those site visits could even potentially change because obviously, as Ryan said, we want to personalize it to like what you guys are interested in learning.
All right. So to wrap up, just curious to know kind of what you're walking out of this webinar with. So how might today's insights shape the way you lead, support your teachers, or impact student learning in your school? And maybe you're walking out with a question still circling in your mind. And so happy to answer those questions right now. Happy to set up a separate phone call or time to connect with you or a team from your school that's thinking about joining the ILN. But we'd just love to hear kind of what your takeaway is from all this information that we presented to you over the last 54 minutes.
And if it's, hey, I'm going to join, that's awesome. We'd love to hear that too. We're certainly hoping to get, we had such a great group last year in terms of just positive energy and, a really big school, small schools, middle schools, high schools. We just had a great mix of people. So we're hoping for the same. Kente, thank you for sharing that. Excited about the site visits and sharing ideas. Happy to have you on board. We know there's good energy in Wayne Westland, that's for sure. Awesome, Kyle. Would love to have you with us. Thanks for considering, Derek. Awesome. Joe, former principal of the year. We know you're a leader and I love your energy and all the work you're doing with AI. So we know you're going to bring a lot to the group. Well, thanks everyone. We appreciate your time this morning and we're excited to be able to work with all of you and to have another great year trying to start that ripple of innovation statewide, and you're part of it for sure.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, everybody. I'll hang on for another minute or two in case somebody has some questions and we can unmute and do that sort of thing. Just be on the lookout for some additional communications regarding the kickoff day and how to sign up. And then for those who do eventually register, we'll send you some information ahead of time, just some things to start planning for, links to get the book for the book study, all those things. I know we have a lot's going on. We wanted to catch you before things got too hectic with PD days and students back in the building or even teachers back in the building. So that's kind of why we picked this day on a Monday. But yeah, we are here to answer any questions, and hopefully we'll see you in the cohort 2 of Innovative Leaders Network for year 1. Thanks, everybody.